Okay. Minister for Communities, Mr. Kenny is not in his place. Call Colin Crawford.
Question number 2, please.
Mr. Speaker, my department is actively engaged in ensuring that claimants and those in vulnerable groups are aware of preventative measures to take to avoid online scams. This includes ensuring claimants can detect potential scams, what action to take and who to contact. Benefit information on NI Direct sets out how my department will liaise with or contact customers. Within many of our online information pages, we also signpost to the public sector ScamWise campaign, which provides advice on how to recognise and report a scam. In addition, Universal Credit claimants have access to a guide within their online account, which provides information on how to stay safe online and keep their Universal Credit account secure. My department regularly uses social media messaging to promote scam awareness. Those messages make it clear that we will never ask for details by text, email or a web link. We also encourage customers to report anything suspicious to Action Fraud or their local office. Digital and IT courses are run regularly across the library network through the Go On NI programme to help people develop their digital skills and to raise awareness. This includes courses on topics such as common internet scams and how to avoid them. Libraries NI also links up with partners to deliver activities as part of national initiatives such as Cyber Week and Safer Internet Day.
Mr. Crawford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Minister for his answer. Has the Minister considered how he might fund some of our excellent community and voluntary organisations to deliver outreach initiatives to raise awareness of the ever-changing scams and prevent individuals from falling foul of them?
Sir.
Of course, Mr. Speaker, we want to make sure that we all do as much as we can to ensure that those who are especially vulnerable to scammers have all of the information that they require in order to make sure that they are as vigilant as possible. If community and voluntary sector organisations are wishing to do that work, it will be up to them to fund that from their budget and make that aware to the department as part of the services that they provide, and then funding opportunities be considered from that.
Members who maybe didn't realise it, but you don't walk in front of the Minister and the person that he's responding to. Call Michelle Guy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Minister, so far. Ministerial announcements such as the winter fuel payment triggers scammers to target beneficiaries. Given the number of older pensioners that are not online, what non-digital communications is the Minister providing to raise awareness of how the payment will be made and how to avoid scammers, especially those who use phones to trick pensioners?
Mr. Speaker, I've certainly made clear in all of the announcements that I have made in the media that I have done on this issue that we will not be asking people for any information, will not be sending out text messages. Instead, this will be an automatic payment, and I hope that the member would join me, as I have done, in making sure that our older people are aware that we will not be contacting them via text message, especially not to ask anybody for any information.
Please become.
Thank you, Speaker, and thank the Minister so far for his answer. Minister, you talked about the winter fuel payment there, and you're not going to send out text or people trying to scam people of whatever age. Can you provide a bit of an update on the winter fuel payments and how that's going?
Yes, sir.
First of all, I think it's important to say that we will be contacting those who are eligible by letter, but we are not going to be asking them to respond to that or to provide any information. It will be automatic. As I had previously promised, the winter fuel payment will be with those who are eligible by the end of the month, and we are still on track to make sure that that happens.
Patsy McDonald.
Thank you, Minister. Minister, just to get back to the scams. Like, some of these scams have become so sophisticated and so good, is probably the wrong word, that it's very hard to determine what's the real thing and what's the scam. So can I ask just what interaction or what collaboration has been between your own department, the Department for the Economy and indeed the PSNI around making people more aware and try to prevent these awful scams that have cleaned people's bank accounts out in some instances?
Minister.
Absolutely. Well, look, clearly I would encourage people first and foremost to be vigilant, and to make sure that we're encouraging others to be vigilant as well, and to consider whether or not we need to give this information that those scammers may be asking for. We certainly do engage on a regular basis with the Department for the Economy, and certainly my department, as he will be aware, sponsors the Commissioner for Older People in Northern Ireland, and they have worked closely with the PSNI in relation to the Scamwise initiative, which aims to raise awareness of scams among older people, and the Commissioner's played a key role in establishing that partnership, and I hope that people would be aware of that they would take part in that as well. But I think there's a responsibility on us all in society as MLAs, but as individuals as well, to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to make sure that people are alert to this, to recognise the importance of holding information and not giving that out when it shouldn't be. And it's always best to take care on these issues and always check and verify.
Paula Bradshaw. Minister.
The Department for Communities has led the development of a suite of social inclusion strategies, including a gender equality strategy on behalf of the Executive. I've taken time to consider the work to date, alongside the unprecedented pressure and resources across Executive departments. Given the challenges we face, I decided to move forward with reinvigorating the ongoing development of the social inclusion strategies on a phased basis. Work on the anti-poverty and disability strategies is currently ongoing, and details of the proposed next steps in developing the gender equality strategy will follow shortly. While the Department for Communities is leading on the development of the strategies, final decisions on its content, publication and implementation will be subject to executive agreement and public consultation.
Ms Bradshaw.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and thank you, Minister, for the update. I was glad to see the reference to the social inclusion strategies in the programme for government that we're debating today, and the references to ending violence against women and girls, gender equality and women returners to the workforce. I think that it is really important that you bring forward the gender equality strategy as soon as possible, and I think that those women's groups out there that are lobbying for it, I think they would probably appreciate a firmer timeline in terms of when that will happen.
Well, if the member's question was to ask me for that timeline, that's not something I have right now. As I've said, I'm taking these strategies forward on a phased basis. There has been a promise for many, many years that the anti-poverty strategy would be in place. It hasn't been. I think it's right that I take this phased approach, but I, of course, will update the House in due course.
Jan Forsyth.
And I thank the Minister for his answers so far. Does the Minister agree with me that some of the gender ideologies espoused by the Alliance Party may in fact be detrimental to women?
Well, of course, the member, not for the first time, is absolutely right, and I don't think that the Alliance Party actually care about this issue, because I think what they're interested in more than anything else is tipping their hat to the gender ideologies that she has mentioned. And when it comes to choosing between standing up for women or adherence to those gender ideologies, they will choose those gender ideologies every single time. We're still, Mr Speaker, they can't even define what a woman is, never mind stand up for one.
Justin McNulty.
John Carter, to thank the Minister for his answers thus far. Minister, of the clients who accessed community advice services here during 2023-2024, 58% were women. Will this gender strategy recognise the disproportionate impact on women of many cuts to benefits?
Well, the whole point of the gender strategy is to make sure that people are protected where there is a difference in outcomes. Obviously, individual actions will be up to those departments to decide, and then that will require executive approval. But yes, it's the whole point of the gender equality strategy is to make sure that those issues can be addressed.
Carl.
I'd urge the Minister not to engage in trans bashing. It's not a good look. Minister, as part of the gender strategy, can he reveal whether his department has discussed introducing a financial payment to help women flee situations of domestic violence where they are at risk?
Well, of course we want to help those that are at risk, and that is work that the Housing Executive is taking forward. But I do have to take issue with his first comment. It's very easy for him to say that any time anyone is critical of the gender ideology which he espouses, that this is trans bashing. It's absolutely not. It is simply the case that we want to make sure that we protect women, because the policies that he espouses would actually harm women and put women into difficult and dangerous situations. So he can throw whatever insults he wants at this side of the House, but we will continue to stand up for what is plainly and evidently truth.
Mr Speaker, could the Minister take this opportunity to enlighten the member who tabled the question originally as to how many genders there are?
Minister.
Mr Speaker, there are 2 genders.
All chambers.
Mr Speaker.
Mr Speaker, my officials have been working closely with Ards and North Down Borough Council and the developer, Bangor Marine, and as a result of that work, the heads of terms have now been agreed with the Crown Estate. The developer, the council and my officials are now finalising the legal agreements to enable a start on site. These discussions are close to completion, and I will provide a further update in the next few weeks.
Chambers.
Thank you. Thank you, Minister, for that very welcome news. Certainly locally there's been a lot of ill-informed and negative speculation that the current development plans were going to fail. So I'm sure, can you offer some reassurance to the local population, because they've been failed so many times at the last hurdle in the past? Can you give some level of reassurance that this development is on course to start?
So, Mr Speaker, can I say to the member that I'm fully aware of the frustrations that exist on the ground. I was there. I was on my first ministerial visits that Mr Dunn took me along to meet with the people that are most involved with that project. I know how long this has been going on. It has been decades. I know the frustrations that exist. He has my commitment that I want to do everything that I can to make sure that this moves forward. My department has been acting appropriately in that regard to make sure that we can make progress, because this has the potential to be a game changer. People have waited too long for it, and I will not be found wanting in making sure that we do everything we can so that it proceeds.
I thank the Minister for his updates, and I hope you do appreciate that this is really frustrating for people in Bangor. Could you please give an indication if you have a timeline for when the building in Queen's Parade will start?
I don't have a timeline for that. There are still some issues to be worked out, but as I've said, I recognise the concern that exists. I recognise the length of time that this has taken. I want to make sure we push this forward as much as possible, and I'll certainly be doing everything that I can within the department to make sure that's the case.
Martin.
Thank you very much, Minister, for your answers. Minister, the Queen's Parade scheme and its completion has a degree of what you might call legendary status for the residents of Bangor. Can I ask you, Minister, to ensure that there's continued local engagement on this development in its final stages?
Yes, absolutely, Mr Speaker. I can commit to that, and indeed my department currently leads a project board for the Queen's Parade development scheme, and we have created a subgroup to make sure that we can focus on communications and stakeholder engagement, and we're going to continue to engage with local stakeholders throughout the delivery of the scheme, especially when we approach key milestones as well, to ensure that they are engaged and informed. And Bangor Marine will also keep the local community informed of progress throughout the consultation phases. I know that businesses in that area are absolutely crying out for action to be taken on this. I understand the frustration, and I commit personally to making sure that I do everything I can to progress this. Mr Speaker, the Housing Executive administers the Disabled Facilities Grant on behalf of my department. This grant provides funding for adaptations for those with a disability who live in private sector homes. In the 24-25 financial year, the Housing Executive received £14.75 million of funding for private sector home improvement grants, which includes the statutory Disabled Facilities Grant. The Housing Executive has advised that it expects to invest £13.91 million of this funding in adaptations via Disabled Facilities Grants. Because these grants and adaptations are in response to need, each year's allocation is based on an estimated requirement. Therefore, I cannot confirm investment in disability housing adaptation schemes for 2025 and 2026 at this stage. Following executive agreement of the draft 25-26 budget on the 19th of December, the Department of Finance launched a 12-week public consultation period, and this is due to close on the 13th of March. My officials have commenced work on options to live within a further year's constrained budgets and the impacts of this, and an equality impact assessment on the Department's 25-26 budget allocation will be drafted and published for consultation to inform final 25-26 budget allocations. Can I assure the member that my department is committed to ensuring that funding is available for those who require disability-related adaptations to enable them to live safely in their homes?
Mrs. Dodds.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Minister. It is good to hear of the amount of money that is invested in this way, because it is invested on behalf of the most vulnerable people in our community. And I do hope that you have a reasonable budget going forward for this. This was brought about, and I hope you understand the issues around the Disabled Facilities Grant. One, the number of reports that have to be made in order to gain the grant. But secondly, Minister, will you commit to looking at the case of a young constituent of mine who is disabled, living in a downstairs bedroom, and urgently needs a Disabled Facilities Grant in order to live her best life?
Mr. Speaker, I want to make sure that we have the budget that covers the needs of everyone in Northern Ireland that needs this help, and I will certainly be doing my best to ensure that that financial support is there. I'm sorry to hear about the individual case that she has raised with me, and that's what we should want for her constituent and for everybody that needs it, that they have the adaptations in place, because we will all have heard those stories of people who are finding it so difficult to get by. So difficult just to live their lives in the accommodation that they're currently in without the changes that they require. So, Mr. Speaker, can I suggest that the member get in contact with me directly with those details, and I would be happy to chase that issue up on her behalf.
Kelly Armstrong.
Minister, during the last Committee for Communities, we were made aware that the Disabled Facilities Grant may well be funded, but that there would be no budget allocated to the Housing Executive for disability adaptations to its own properties. In the shameful absence of the disability strategy, does the Minister agree that failing to provide accessible housing to meet the needs of tenants is discrimination?
Minister.
So, Mr. Speaker, this is exactly why I've brought forward a housing supply strategy to make sure that we do have the necessary homes in place. It's why that there is a target in place of 10% of new build starts of general needs units being wheelchair accessible. So I'm making sure that I can do everything that I can to ensure that we have the facilities that are there. But clearly, I want to make sure that we have those abilities to adapt existing buildings at the same time. She will understand the constrained budgetary environment that we are operating in, but it's yet again another reason why we need to see the revitalisation of the Housing Executive so that we can fund those improvements and adaptations that our constituents need.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank the Minister for his answers so far. Minister, with regards to adaptations for those living with a disability and their housing, there's currently 1,079 delays. Minister, what are you doing to end those delays and to speed things up?
I hope that the member is aware that we are working closely with the Housing Executive and the Department of Health as part of the Housing Executive administered private sector grant review to identify measures to improve the operation of the Disabled Facilities Grant and reduce end-to-end processing times. And one of the measures being considered is a fast-track process for people with life-limiting illnesses, and I have asked my officials to prioritise this work. Since 2022, the Housing Executive has reduced the average wait time for Disabled Facilities Grant by 141 days. This is a significant improvement, but the current time wait for adaptations is still too long, and I am keen to reduce this wait time further as part of the review, and my officials are looking into what further changes can be made in partnership with Health and the Housing Executive.
William Irwin.
Mr. Speaker, the terms of reference for the task and finish group are currently being drafted. However, as I set out on my statement on the 11th of February to this House, The group will look critically at every intervention we take and focus on the high-risk areas to maximise the return on investment for hard-working taxpayers. This will include exploring digital developments to support counter-fraud activity. The Task and Finish Group will also examine prosecutions, data retention, the recovery of fraud over payments and official error to ensure we are using every tool at our disposal to get the right money to the right people at the right time. This is a priority for me and for people right across Northern Ireland who place their trust in the integrity of our welfare system. Through the Task and Finish Group, I want to recognise the importance of the safety net our welfare system provides and the imperative of ensuring that every penny goes to those who are genuinely eligible. The focus of the Task and Finish Group will be about building on the good work already underway in my department and ensuring we have robust mechanisms in place to identify fraud at the earliest opportunity, to stop money going out the door and, importantly, to recover money that has been claimed under false pretences.
Mr. Irwin.
I thank the Minister for his response. What action is the Minister taking to ensure that concerns from his members of staff, particularly in jobs and benefits offices, are heard and that action is taken?
Well, I'm grateful to the member for raising these questions because the members of staff that he is referring to are at the coal face, and I want to make sure that they are heard. There are processes in place to raise concerns, and I want to encourage all of those with information or concerns to continue to do so through those channels. I want to send a message to my staff today that I want to work with them, that we're in this together, and I will work with them so that we can tackle this critically important issue. And if further action needs to be taken, it will be taken, because, Mr. Speaker, I believe that it is wrong. Some people in this House have said that £163 million is only a small figure. I believe that that is money that can be better spent on public services and on protecting people in Northern Ireland who need it.
Minister, your statement referenced the decision to change the policy around so-called naming and shaming. So can I ask what evidence you looked at to justify that change?
Well, I think the first bit of evidence that stood out, Mr. Speaker, was the fact that we have seen a doubling in percentage terms of welfare fraud over the last number of years. Quite simply, I believe that if you have deliberately misrepresented your circumstances, if you have been found to have done that, then it is right that as part of the judicial process that you're able to be named, and I hope that that will be a deterrent to those who might be tempted to do it, but also that might send a message to the public that we are taking this issue seriously.
Dixon.
Thank you, Minister, for your answers so far. But, Minister, given that customer error overpayments total some £50.8 million in 2023, what analysis has been done to understand why these errors are occurring, and how can your systems be simplified to prevent them in the future?
Minister.
And those are also issues that we take on board. We do have a record of tackling official error, but we need to go further. So in addition to management checks in individual benefit branches, specialist teams will also use a risk-based approach to target areas that may give rise to official errors. This amounted to over 23,000 cases being reviewed last year for accuracy, leading to the adjustment of benefit in 4,447 cases. And all errors are highlighted to staff to aid continuous learning. I want us to tackle fraud, but we also need to tackle error as well.
Callum.
Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, it's my assessment that the Musical Instruments Programme, which is an important capital investment programme delivered by the Arts Council on behalf of my department, aligns well with the principles and priorities I have set out in my written ministerial statement of the 3rd of July on the Heritage, Culture and Creativity Programme. That is, a focus on the contribution each of the sectors can make in terms of equality of access and opportunity across socio-economic grouping, age, geography and so on. The encouragement of greater participation, particularly from people in communities that might feel that heritage is not for them, or that their cultural or artistic activities and traditions don't quite fit. and exploring the potential for encouraging new and deeper collaborations and partnerships, supporting greater financial sustainability across the sectors, and identifying approaches and opportunities that maximise the value of these important assets and their potential for identifying, measuring and increasing their contribution to achieving department and executive policy outcomes, including in relation to health and general well-being, education and the economy. I want to ensure that priority is given to provide support which reaches younger people from more deprived areas, those living in rural areas and areas distant from Belfast, and those not currently engaged in cultural activities. With a total of investment of $823,000 in 24-25, all eligible applicants were able to be supported. That was 119 grants awards to 75 bands, 13 professional and non-professional performing groups and 31 professional musicians. From marching bands and school groups to traditional musicians and musical societies, musicians can replace older, worn-out instruments and purchase new ones, thereby increasing the quality of music making in Northern Ireland.
Mr. Buchanan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and can I thank the Minister for his response. And I do know some of the benefit that this has been to some of the folk that received it. Can the Minister at this early stage give any indication as to how many people might actually benefit from this particular
Minister? Absolutely, Mr. Speaker, and this investment, and it is an investment, will mean that 4,500 people will directly benefit from this investment across every constituency in Northern Ireland. And it is unusual, I think, sometimes for grant schemes to have made such a significant impact across such a wide geographic area, and I will be looking to expand on this work in the future.
McMurray.
Speaker, and thank you to the Minister for the answer so far. Given that more than 85% of the latest round of music instruments for bands was awarded to one particular background, how does his department intend to ensure that the funding reaches a diverse range of musical genres and cultural traditions within Northern Ireland?
Mr. Speaker, I have the full list here of all of those that were eligible. And first of all, can I say that this is awarded on a fair and equitable basis. So I don't think that there should be any indication coming from the member that that was not the case. We have many different organisations from many different backgrounds who apply for this music instruments scheme. We have bands, yes, from all backgrounds. We have individuals from all backgrounds, and we have many professional and non-professional performing groups from all over Northern Ireland, and getting the funding that they require to increase the musical capacity that we have here in Northern Ireland. So I actually think that we should welcome this. We should welcome this investment. We should welcome the fact that it's all over Northern Ireland. We should welcome the fact that this will encourage more people to get involved and get involved in the arts, often from communities and backgrounds that might not normally have the opportunity. So I'm very, very proud of what it is that we're able to deliver.
Michelle McElveen.
Mr. Speaker, I fully recognise the potential impact which the financial constraints faced by Northern Ireland Water may have on the delivery of the Executive Housing Supply Strategy. Indeed, the necessity of addressing wastewater capacity limitations is referred to clearly throughout the strategy. I have had a number of meetings with representatives of the construction sector in recent weeks who have spoken to me about the growing impact of these constraints on their ability to deliver homes. In light of this, I have written to the Minister for Infrastructure to highlight my concerns about this issue and to express again the need to identify new actions to address it. I look forward to working with her and her department to develop these actions. It's important to emphasise that the strategy is centred on a whole system approach to supply, and the Executive has committed to working collaboratively to address all barriers to supply, including water infrastructure.
Ms. McElveen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank the Minister for his response. And I appreciate that this is a DFI issue, but which has cross-cutting consequences impacting on all other departments. Can I ask the Minister what further action he is taking to ensure DFI address the wastewater infrastructure challenges that we're facing?
Minister.
First of all, Mr Speaker, I would highlight the fact that we do now have two documents which highlight the importance of this issue, documents that have been called for a long time. First of all, a housing supply strategy that we now have in place, a housing supply strategy that was agreed by all executive ministers. And I expect that that will be given the priority that it deserves and what actually people signed up to, because it is important that we work together to deliver on this issue. And it is an issue that we have said is a priority for the executive. And the programme for government published today recognises that it is a priority. Again, something that was called for many, many years, a standalone outcome in the programme for government for housing, and that is something that I have been able to deliver. Now, I want to make sure that all ministers are aware of the responsibilities that they face, and to that end I have asked for a meeting with the infrastructure minister so that we can make sure that the commitments that we have promised in signing up to that document are fulfilled.
Move to topical questions. Call Daniel McCrossan.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Minister, in the programme for government picture book, which is what it's like, it says by the end of this mandate we will have started work on at least 5,850 new build homes. The waiting list currently sits at 47,000, with 35,000 in housing stress. The First Minister describes this document as ambitious. Do you agree with her assessment, and do you believe that your target is ambitious for the many thousands of people that are without homes?
Mr Speaker, first of all, we've actually delivered on this issue in terms of having the standalone outcome in the programme for government. For the first time, we have an executive that has recognised the importance of this issue. Secondly, we have a housing supply strategy in place as well. I do have ambitions for this place and for our housing in particular, which is why I haven't waited for a draft programme for government to be published before I have taken action. We have made sure that there is more funding available for social housing. Whenever I came into office in this year, we thought that we would only be in a position with the money that we have to start 400 homes. I've increased that, and this year we will start over 1,400 homes. That is not the height of my ambition, but it shows what we can achieve whenever we put our mind to it. I want to make sure that we increase even more, not just social homes, but supply right across Northern Ireland. That's what I'm committed to doing.
Thank you, Minister. Given the pace of how government operates in this place, when will they actually be finished is probably the question we all have. And also given that one of the key hurdles in delivering housing in Northern Ireland is a lack of wastewater infrastructure, are you disappointed, Minister, as someone that sits at the executive table, that the lack of investment in wastewater infrastructure hasn't even been mentioned in this document? So really, is your target an actual target?
Minister.
I want to go beyond what we have actually said. It's the same for the housing supply strategy as well. We have set a plan for 100,000 homes, but I want to make sure that we increase that and go further. But, Mr Speaker, in terms of wastewater, if you've been listening to the last question, I've set out the concerns that I have and the action that we need to take, and certainly I will not be found wanting in making sure that we push this issue and actually get delivery.
Dillon.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and thanks to the Minister. Minister, can you explain the rationale for setting the partnership funding criterion for the football fund at 40% for council-owned grounds and 5% for all other eligible applicants?
Minister.
Yes, because as publicly owned grounds, it's always the expectation when it comes to funding that they will pay a greater contribution than those within the private sector.
Still.
Can you outline what engagement you or your department had with the councils in the development of the co-design of a football fund? 40% seems quite substantial.
My understanding is that's actually in line with other funding pots that are in place. We have to remember that this fund is coming forward because there's market failure, because additional support is required, and that some may not have the finances to do that themselves. We understand that it's generally the expectation that councils find themselves in a different position, but of course I'm more than happy to listen to any concerns that people have expressed.
Bobby Butler.
Thank you, Minister. Can the Minister provide an update or clarity on the programme for government commitment of seeking Treasury agreement on appropriate treatment of borrowing to enable the Northern Ireland Housing Executive to increase investments in homes, improve energy efficiency and contribute to new home supply?
Mr. Speaker, this has been one of my top priorities since coming into office. This is led primarily by the Department of Finance, but I have used every opportunity that I have had with every UK Government Minister to highlight the importance of housing executive revitalisation, and I will continue to do so. I believe that progress has been made. I believe that the case has been made to Treasury. I believe that it is a sound one, and I look forward to them making that decision so that we can see real change and potentially one of the most important and transformative things that we can do during this mandate.
Butler.
I thank the Minister for his answer, and certainly he will recognise this has been an Ulster Unionist commitment for many years. I'm sure the Minister will also agree that housing supply, increasing energy efficiency will contribute to the overall well-being of our citizens. Can the Minister therefore advise, if Northern Ireland Housing Executive were to be given this ability tomorrow, how quickly they can move and what improvements renters would see in the short, mid, medium and long term?
Well, I've wanted to make sure that we are ready to go, which is why in discussions with the Housing Executive I have asked them to make sure that whenever this treatment rule, which I hope will be put in, is put in, that we're ready to go. And I have confidence in Gráinne Long and the leadership of the Housing Executive to make sure that we are ready to go on day one. Clearly there are short-term things that we will be able to progress as well as longer-term issues such as building more homes. But I am assured that there will be a plan in place and that can be taken forward.
A growing call to introduce a no-fault eviction ban to protect people living in the private rented sector. Would he commit to introduce legislation to such an effect?
Mr. Speaker, my focus right now is on doing what the Assembly has mandated me to do in terms of private rented sector, including increasing the notice to quit periods.
Mr. Carl.
Thank you. It's a disappointing answer, Minister. Minister, do you think it's morally acceptable that landlords can evict people for no reason and throwing their life up in the air? And what assessment has he made about its impact on the growing waiting lists year on year?
Well, I am aware of the growing waiting list in the private rented sector. Does need reform. That's why we are bringing forward a series of measures. But ultimately, this all comes back to supply across all tenures, and that's where my focus is right now, on making sure that we have everything in place to build more homes across all tenures, so that we can make housing more affordable for people.
Colin Killian.
We are increasingly concerned about your continued failure to bring forward an Irish language strategy to the Executive. Will you take this opportunity today to actually say when you will bring that strategy forward? Thank you.
So, Mr. Speaker, that's largely out of my hands, because work is ongoing in relation to the development of both the Irish language and the Ulster Scots strategies. There has been a cross-departmental working group that has been set up to look at the potential actions that could come from that and look at the cost of those actions. I fully respect the rights of people in regards to their cultural and linguistic heritages, and I want to make sure that we balance that with some of the costs that may come with that as well. So the working group has been set up. That will come back to me, but ultimately it will be the executive for the executive to decide the way forward.
And I respect that, but the question I've asked is, approximately when you'll be bringing it forward to the Executive. So I'll follow it up with a written question. Given the fact that you're in office over a year, Conor na Gaeilge have repeatedly asked for a meeting with yourself regarding the progressive strategy. Can you confirm if you have any intention of meeting him?
Yes, I do, and it's the same approach that I've taken to the disability strategy, the anti-poverty strategy and the language strategies. The work has been done, the co-design groups and the expert panels have done their work. That came to the department. I then sent all of that work out to the other departments through the cross-departmental working group to come back with actions. Once that work is completed, in the case of all of those strategies, we will engage directly with those groups before taking to the Executive.
Eva Finnegan.
Minister, as you know, there is a huge amount of concern and frustration among stakeholders about the lack of an anti-poverty strategy for the North. Can you confirm when you will bring an anti-poverty strategy to the Executive for agreement?
It's my intention to bring an anti-poverty strategy to the Executive before the end of this month.
Ms. Finnegan.
Thank you. And how will you ensure that the anti-poverty strategy is fully implemented?
Sure. That's why I've set up the cross-departmental working group, so that they can take actions and make sure that it is realistic, make sure that it's feasible, and make sure that it's affordable as well. It will be up to each department to take their actions and to make sure that those actions are funded and that they proceed with them. That's how we can make sure that it is actually implemented, and why it's important that I actually took these recommendations from the departments rather than not having any engagement and just throwing a document down in front of the executive table in order for that to get support. That's not the way that I do business. I want to make sure that what we have is actually realistic and achievable, which is why I'm taking the approach that I'm taking.
Andy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The fuel poverty strategy consultation is due to close this coming Thursday, the 6th. Can the Minister give an insight as to how many responses have been received to date and when we're likely to see the final version of that strategy?
I don't have the figures. He's right to say that it closes on the 6th of March. I don't have those figures, but I will be happy to share those with him when I do.
Mr. Allen.
Can I thank the Minister for his answer? And on nearly every issue, the Minister has highlighted the challenging budget scenario his department faces. Can the Minister give a guarantee that the fuel poverty strategy will be robust and it will actually lift households out of poverty in context of the challenging environment that he faces?
Sure. We certainly do have funding in place that we currently use in order to tackle these issues, and I look forward to that budget being best used whenever we bring forward the next fuel poverty strategy. I want to make sure that we can scale up some of that work, but it's absolutely my intention that this is actually effective because fuel poverty is a significant issue for many people across Northern Ireland, and it's a significant tool that we have to defeat poverty.
Last week, a senior official in the GA reflected their view, I should say it's a widely held view, that you are dragging your heels in relation to Casement Park. Can I ask, Minister, why you still have not met the British Secretary of State in relation to the British Government's commitment to provide funding for Casement Park?
Mr. Speaker, I have asked for a meeting with the Secretary of State. I have written to the Secretary of State asking for what potential contribution he is willing to make to sport in Northern Ireland. I've heard the comments that have been made. I think that they are regretful that they were made because everybody is being treated equally when it comes to sport and when it comes to funding in Northern Ireland. And we have to recognise the reality of the situation that we are finding ourselves in. Ravenhill and Windsor Park got their money and got their refurbishments in their respective sports. The reason why Casement has not been able to draw down the full £62.5 million is not because of any action or lack of action on my part. It's because of issues around safety certificates that was investigated by this Assembly prior to 2016. It's because of planning permission, it's because of judicial reviews, it's because of construction companies going into administration. Now I know it's very easy for people to send out a message that this is about inequality and this is about bad unionists who are not doing what we want them to do. But there is no sport that is getting a hostile environment. In fact, there is only one sport that fell victim to politics, and that is football, because for 14 years football was not given the money that it wanted to draw down for the Northern Ireland Football Fund, because we had Sinn Féin ministers who made sure that that was connected to Casement, and that they were determined that the Football Fund wouldn't proceed if Casement wasn't proceeding. I am more than happy to make sure that that money that was promised goes to Casement, but there's no reason for that money to have held up for football.
Mr. Wigan.
Minister, the public, within the public there is an enthusiasm and knowledge of the transformative impact that Casement Park could have. There's also knowledge that that enthusiasm isn't shared by the Minister, who should be knocking down the door to the British Government to get that meeting. But moving on, Minister, last week the President of the GAA said he feels that the GAA are operating in a hostile environment with regards to the failure of unionist politicians to condemn anti-GAA signs erected in Randalstown. Can I ask the Minister today what will he do to address those genuine concerns?
Well, I think what we do to address those concerns is, first of all, to make sure that we tell the truth.
Yeah.
Because it has been alleged that my party has not condemned the signs that went up. That was absolutely false, because Trevor Clark was out as the local representative doing just that. So let's make sure that we introduce truth into these discussions as well. In terms of the hostile environment that has been talked about, it might be worth bearing in mind that the money has been made available on the same basis as was agreed to everybody else. There is engagement that is ongoing. In fact, my department meet at least once a month with the GAA. So I know that there is this idea that is out there that some people feel as if they're being targeted or there's a hostile environment. It's about the reality of the situation that we find ourselves in, the sums of money that are required to complete that project. And over the last 14 years, there has been delay. But again, that delay cannot be laid at the feet of any unionist, and perhaps he should look closer to home for some of the reasons why those delays have taken place. I am more than willing to engage with the Secretary of State, to engage with the GAA and others. But people should maybe think of what's the best way to progress this and not just what gets a cheap headline.
That brings to a conclusion question time. I now move back to the programme for government and call Cheryl Brownlee.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today we are discussing something that truly matters. What this means for people on